Hi, Emily. Can you see my Negotiate Like a Pro screen? Yes, thank you. Okay, it's 2 o'clock. I'll still kind of be admitting people, but if everybody could turn on your videos. The state requires that we have our videos on as much as possible. So if you can turn on your videos, if you don't have them on already, that would be super nice. If you've been to some of my other classes, basically you'll just have to send me an email that says the 5 keywords that we go over in the class today to get your credit. When you signed up, I have your license number, so I have that information, and I'll just go ahead and submit the credits. So you get 2 hours of core today for this class. And so just make sure that you write down, so you met this person. Make sure you write down the keywords as we go along. You'll have to have 4 out of the 5. So if you miss a keyword, not the end of the world, but you'll have to have 4 out of the 5. Bethany, can you type in the chat my email address, please? So everybody has it. You should have it, but she can type it in the chat so that we have it. And then let's see if we have any brave souls who want to tell us one thing they negotiated on today. What have you negotiated with today? Could be anything. Could be a real estate deal. Could be negotiating with some kids this morning to get them to school. Could be, what have you done to negotiate today? Do you negotiate all day long?
Negotiated with the seller to get a listing.
Okay. How did that go? Do you want to tell us about it?
Sure. Yeah, it went well. It was my first deal, so I had to kind of prove that I knew what I was talking about and build trust. They would.
Awesome. Okay. Now, did you have any strategies, Josh? When you were going in there, did you have any strategies that you kind of planned out?
Yeah, I just tried to go in there with a full quiver as far as possible questions they could ask. Not like a listing presentation, but yeah, I'm still learning, so I could have probably
That's
had
awesome.
more, better prepared.
Hey, you got it though, right?
Yep, I did for sure.
Okay, good job. Anybody else? Abby, do you want to tell us about our negotiations? So Abby and I had a buyer yesterday. I'll let Abby tell a little bit about it, but it's kind of an interesting one.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
So we put an offer on a townhouse in Taylorsville, and it had multiple offers. So there were 3 buyers who were trying for that home, and my buyers were the only ones who asked for closing costs, though I tried to tell them not to. And by the time they decided not to ask for closing costs, the seller had already picked another buyer. So we didn't get that one.
So that was an interesting one, Abby. Thanks, because Abby called me and said, what do you think? You know, we were trying to talk about it. At the end of the day, who is she responsible to? The buyer, right? The principal. She's responsible to them, and she had to do what they wanted to do, even though it ended up costing them the deal. And I think, Abby, don't you think they maybe would have gotten the deal had they decided sooner to let go of the closing costs?
Yes, they were in the running except for the closing costs. So if they had let go of it, they would have definitely got the home.
Okay, so it's interesting to try to figure out how to negotiate, how to please everybody in the deal, right? You're trying to please the seller, you're trying to please the borrower, trying to please yourself. This is kind of what we're going to talk about today. And, you know, even though we're negotiating all the time, they really train us to negotiate. So I've got some videos today that we're going to watch from some of the master negotiators. And if you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand, type it into the chat. Bethany will kind of help me with monitoring the chat, and let's discuss things, right? Because we can learn from each other. Let's see here. Okay, so today we're going to we'll see how much time we have. But the idea of today is to make negotiating the real estate purchase contract, understand your duties pertaining to Utah code governing real estate agents, and learn tips and tricks to protect and give your clients every possible advantage. So that's kind of what we're going to talk about today. Now, you guys are negotiating all the time, right? It's one of the most important things you do as agents. And you're negotiating with broker splits for your office space. You might be negotiating the property. You're negotiating with the seller. So like Josh said, he's trying to get a listing. Once you go under contract, if the appraisal comes in low, you might have to negotiate with the appraiser. You're negotiating with a prospective buyer to use you, buyers and sellers. You have listing agents who are negotiating with potential buyers, so both sides. If there's repairs, you might be negotiating repairs. Anybody know where we want to see repair negotiations? Do we want to see them on addendums? Typically not. Kaylee's shaking her head. Typically, we don't want to see those on addendums when you're negotiating repairs. So if you have to have something on the addendum, that has to be done before we can close on that loan. So if for some reason you're negotiating repairs and you decide to lower the purchase price, then you just want to say, we're going to lower the purchase price. You don't want to say because the roof leaks, right? Or because the roof needs to be replaced, because then our underwriters are going to say, okay, let's replace the roof. So in another one of my classes, one of the agents said, talk to your lender when you're negotiating repairs, see how they want to see it, because it'll help you in the long run when you're trying to get the loan done. So every day we're negotiating, and ideally we're going to be the best negotiators out there. And we're going to talk about some strategies about how you can be a little bit at the top of your game when you're negotiating. So figuring out what they want and how you can help them get it is going to be the key. And I want to show you a video by Chris Ross, Chris Voss, excuse me, who's a really good negotiator. He negotiates for the FBI sometimes, hostage negotiations. But here's a video. Now, I've never done this before, so just a minute. You might have to unmute and tell me if you can see it. Just a second. It's not going to let me click on it right here. There it goes. I practiced with my dad today. And now
Share the other screen, Eden.
Open link.
Where-
Yeah, I just had to get it to click on the link and it wasn't doing that. Second, it'll take me a minute. Let's see. I have to skip the ad first. Okay. No, that's not the right one. Well, that's not the right one. Dang it. Just a minute. Okay, here it is. We'll watch a few videos today. Okay, now I have to share it. Just a minute, you guys. Sorry. Okay. Okay, now when I share this, I can't see you guys anymore, so you'll have to unmute and tell me you can hear it. Can we hear it? Can we see it?
Yes.
I
Yeah,
recently read
thank
the
you.
book Never Split the Difference by author Chris Voss. Several years ago, author Chris Voss was invited to a negotiating class at Harvard. The class instructor asked Chris to conduct a mock negotiation with one of the Harvard students. In this mock negotiation, Chris was selling a product, and his counterpart was given a set budget to buy the product. Chris and the Harvard student went back and forth until they arrived at an agreed price. When the instructor walked up to them and asked, "What was the price you agreed upon?" Chris told her, and she immediately burst out laughing. She said, "Chris, you literally got every dime he had." The instructor was used to seeing her students split the difference between the minimum selling price the seller was given and the max budget the buyer was given. But somehow, author Chris Voss had convinced his negotiating counterpart to willingly offer his entire budget. To see if it was a fluke, the instructor had Chris negotiate a different student the following day. And again, Chris walked away with the maximum amount. These Harvard students knew every cutting-edge negotiating technique in the book. So how did Chris Voss convince them to give him their entire budget? Well, Chris wasn't just some guy off the street. Chris was the lead hostage negotiator for the FBI. And after dozens of high-stakes negotiations with kidnappers around the world, Chris Voss found that the key to getting what he wanted and avoiding compromises and making the other side feel like they were treated fairly was tactical empathy. Tactical empathy is the act of sincerely empathizing with your counterpart's situation and then getting them to empathize with your situation. Let me tell you why demonstrating sincere empathy is critical to negotiation, and how giving and receiving empathy is the key to walking away from a negotiation with the best possible price, best possible salary, or the best possible contract, while making the other party feel like they were treated fairly. During a psychotherapy session, a psychiatrist will encourage a patient to talk while she listens intensely. Occasionally, the psychiatrist will jump in to help clarify what the patient is saying and feeling. Psychiatrists do this because they know that their patient will be less defensive and less opposed to change if they can make them feel heard. The same principle applies to a negotiation. During a negotiation, your counterpart will be uncomfortable dealing with you and resist your counteroffers until you demonstrate that you understand their world and can empathize with their cares and concerns. A woman in Chris Voss's negotiating workshop learned this the hard way. The woman, who we'll call Susan, was a sales rep for a pharmaceutical company. She was attempting to influence a doctor to replace one of the drugs that he was prescribing to his patients with a drug that she was selling. In the first meeting with the doctor, he was cold and skeptical. He told her that nothing would convince him to replace the drug he was already administering his patients. Although this initial sales pitch was going terrible, Susan started to see how deeply he cared for his patients. When he talked about any one of his patients, his body language and tone of voice was noticeably warmer. Susan pointed it out. "You seem very passionate about treating your patients. I can see how hard you work to tailor specific treatments to each and every patient." The doctor paused and looked at her as if he was seeing her for the first time and said, "That's right. I feel like I'm treating an epidemic that the other doctors are not picking up on, which means that a lot of patients are not getting treated adequately." From that moment on, the doctor let down his guard and was willing to listen to what Susan had to say. When Susan brought up the positive attributes of her product, he listened closely. By the end of the meeting, the doctor said he was open to trying the new medication, and he placed an order that day. The magical words that turned around Susan's conversation with the doctor were, "That's right." If you can get your counterpart to say the words, "That's right," then you know you've made them feel heard, and you'll know that they'll be more receptive to any offers and counteroffers that you make from that point forward. Author Chris Voss says, "A negotiation doesn't truly start until you hear the words, 'That's right.' The best way to get your counterpart to say the words, 'That's right,' is to listen to the emotion behind your counterpart's words. Your goal is to spot some cares and concerns that they have regarding the negotiation, and then summarize those cares and concerns with a concise statement that starts with, 'It seems like,' or 'It sounds like.' As in, it seems like you're really concerned about blank, or it sounds like blank is really important to you." The beauty of starting your statements with, "It seems like," or "It sounds like," is that if you're wrong, you don't damage the conversation, since you can follow up with, "Well, I didn't say that's how it was, it just seems that way." But if your counterpart confirms your summary statement with a "That's right," then it's time to get them to empathize with your situation. Chris Voss says the best way to get someone to empathize with your situation and start thinking of ways in which they can help you is to ask calibrated questions. Calibrated questions are open-ended questions that start with how or what and are calibrated to direct your counterpart's focus towards your problem. They turn a negotiation from a confrontation to a problem-solving session. Chris Voss says, "The ultimate calibrated question is, how am I supposed to do that?" Let's say you're renting an apartment and your landlord tells you that he's going to increase the rent from $1,200 a month to $1,500 a month. The best way to avoid the rent increase and negotiate a lower rent is to empathize with his position and then ask a version of, "How am I supposed to do that?" You could say, "It seems like you think your apartment is undervalued and you just want a fair market price. But how am I supposed to pay $1,500 a month when I only make enough money to afford $1,200 a month?" The key is to say, "How am I supposed to do that?" in the same way you would say, "I value your intelligence. Can you please help me solve my problem?" At this stage, if you've made your counterpart feel heard, you've built rapport with them. And when you ask your counterpart the calibrated question, "How am I supposed to do that?" your counterpart will most likely do one of two things. They'll either come up with a creative solution so that both of you can get what you value most, or they'll raise or lower their initial demand to accommodate you. If they take option 2, but still give you an offer that doesn't meet your needs, you simply respond with a slightly different calibrated question. Back to the rental example, if your landlord reduces his rent to $1,400 a month, you could respond with, "That's very generous of you. That's probably the lowest price you can go, but I'm sorry. I just don't see how I'm supposed to pay $1,400 a month to stay here when I can rent a similar apartment nearby for less than $1,200 a month." This technique of politely countering every offer with some version of, "How am I supposed to do that?" is precisely how Chris Voss got those Harvard students to willingly offer him their entire budget. So the next time you go into a negotiation, empathize with their situation and try to get a "that's right." Then get them to empathize with your situation and ask them to help solve one of your problems by asking a calibrated question like, "How am I supposed to do that?" If you do this, you're on your way to mastering the art of negotiation, which is simply the art of getting someone else to have your way. That was the core message that I gathered from Never Split.
Okay, so now I have to go back and stop sharing, sorry. Okay, so who wants to tell us, well, actually, everybody open up your chat. Let's do it this way. Open your chat and share with us your key point that you took away from that video. If you're driving, don't open your chat and try to type. Josh, I'm curious though, when you were doing your negotiation for your listing, did you go in asking them what they wanted? Like he talked about in that video.
I mean, yeah, I went in asking them what they did want. That was how much they wanted out of their property.
Okay. Right, so your start is, what do you need out of this, right? How much you want from this, okay? Okay, let's look at some of these. How am I supposed to do that? Chris said. Aubrey said empathy on both sides. Asking how am I supposed to do that? Empathy, empathize. Making the other person feel understood and heard. Show empathy and ask open-ended questions to get their help. Mary, good. Ask calibrated questions to steer the conversation. You did use that word, calibrated questions, good. Get them to empathize, get a "that's right." I like the non-confrontational approach, Denise says. It felt like a soft approach, good. Lily says empathize with it seems like, then ask, how am I supposed to do that? Empathy, see it from their point of view, meet people at their pain, and you can take them anywhere. Jim Rohn, okay, good. That's right, okay. Anybody want to unmute and just give us a little bit of an idea of what negotiation that you've had that maybe this could have helped with? So think about the last negotiation you had in real estate, either like Josh with the seller to get the listing or with one of your buyers. Did you call the seller's agent on a buyer listing and ask them what they were looking for? I know Abby and I talked about that a little bit. What do they want? What are they going to need in this situation, right? So before you even make your offer, do you know what the sellers are looking for? Mary said, as a TC, I don't negotiate. Okay, that's all right. You might negotiate in other areas of your life. Okay, so anybody want to give us a little bit of feedback on this? How can you empathize with a seller's agent if you're the buyer's agent?
Well, I had a real tough situation that I had to negotiate in January. We had a condo, and even though the rep C said that the seller was responsible for approved, I'm trying to remember what they called it. It was an improvement fee. It was an increase in the in the
In the
HOA
HOA.
fee. It was a for improve. It was an assessment. Even though they were responsible for the assessment, they were trying to pass it on to my buyer. And this would have been helpful.
Can you tell us a little bit about how that went down and what happened?
Well, I ended up just saying it's in the contract. Your client needs to pay for it. That's just the bottom line. My client isn't going to pay for it.
Did they still accept the offer? Were they mad? How did that?
They accepted the offer, and this was about a month in. It kind of came up. It was a really complex situation. The assessment, they didn't have final numbers on the assessment, but when they came in, it was a lot higher than we'd expected, and they ended up paying for it.
But I think this is a good point, like this would have helped you in that it would have been nice to not have it just have to be this bottom line thing, right? And be able to talk about it a little bit more and have them be okay and happy too. Because that's what we want to avoid, is anybody coming away from a transaction, whether one person is like, whether Alicia, you won that, right? And you got what you wanted for your buyers, but you never really want to come away from a negotiation where you get what you want, but the other person's angry, right? Because we're always working with each other. And so you don't want it to be that the next time they see your name on an offer letter or with an offer that they don't look at it, right? Which shouldn't happen, but I think probably it does sometimes, just with human nature.
Yeah.
So ideally, we want to make sure that both sides are happy with the negotiations. So thank you for sharing that. Lily, were you going to share something?
Well, there are times when I'm not comfortable with some tactics like this. I think they're very helpful. But unless they're sincere, unless you really feel like the doctor is concerned about his patients, if you're just saying it to win a point, that's when I have a hard time with it.
Well, and I would agree. I don't think any of these work unless you're sincere. So I appreciate you bringing up that point, right? You have to really care about the other side when you're doing this to have it work. You have to really want for everybody to be okay and for everybody to feel good about everything. And so I think you're right. Genuine's always the best, I feel like.
It goes back to honesty, I think. But
yeah, I would agree. Okay, anybody else want to comment?
Yeah, could I say something?
Hi, Denise. Yeah.
Hi. Hey, so thinking about this, in my experience, I think the best negotiations that I've had is when the relationship with the other agent starts really good right from the beginning. And what I've experienced, a lot of agents like to text now, but if you can make a connection and if you can talk and establish that relationship at the very beginning, by the time you get to negotiating, it's so much easier because you've already got that trust and relationship established. And then I think that really helps with the honesty because you've already got that. It's not like just a tactic. It's already been built.
Yeah, I agree. Well, you can always tell when somebody's not genuine. At least it feels, you kind of feel a little bit different. So yeah, we definitely want to learn how to really care about the other party, and that makes it helpful. Now you care about the other party, but you're negotiating on behalf of your side, right? And we really don't want to have anybody walk away in a worse situation. We want to make it okay for everybody. So that's great comments. Okay, so it is a little bit crazy that we aren't really taught negotiations when we do it all the time, but I'd like to talk about these three things. First, instead of focusing on your win, focus on their win. We talked about this a little bit. Call the sales agent, talk to them about what they need, what they want. Get a rapport going with them. Ask what's the most important thing for them in their exchange. What do you hope to accomplish? Ask questions to focus on them, on their primary why. Bethany's saying we need a keyword. So let's have the keyword be empathy. So our first keyword is empathy. Thank you. First keyword is empathy. Now, I always ask this, and I'm just going to tell. We'll end 20 minutes before the hour, just because we can have 2 10-minute breaks. Have a 10-minute break per hour, but nobody ever wants to stay and have a 10-minute break. So we'll just end 20 minutes early. Make sure you listen. Can anybody talk about an experience they've had when the other side didn't listen at all? So if you go in to talk to somebody, and they don't listen to what you're saying at all, can you really negotiate with somebody like that? Then basically you just have to set your best offer and hope for the best if they won't really talk to you at all. So yeah, listening is super important. Try to lay in their bed, stare at the ceiling with them, get in their head. What are they thinking about? What do they want? Why do they want it? In Abby's case and my case, that negotiation, they wanted a quick close because they were moving out of state. Knowing that helped us be in a lot better position because I could close the loan in 20 business days. And so then that helped us. Now our client still didn't let go of the seller's concession, so we didn't get it. But knowing that makes a big difference because then we can tighten up our deadlines. Do your homework. What's happening in the industry? What needs and challenges do they have? Anybody want to be brave and tell us about what's happening in our industry right now? What changes does the industry have in when you're making offers right now versus, let's say, a year ago? Why is that important to know about what's going on in our market right now?
I still think it's very mixed. You have some houses that are the same flying off the shelf that you've got to jump on, and others are different. So I think you've got to definitely still make those calls and find out what the sellers are looking for and what activity they have.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, because we are seeing some seller concessions right now. The last 2 deals I've gotten in, 10,000 in seller concessions. And then with this other deal, like there was too many offers. They didn't need the seller concessions, right? So knowing kind of how many offers are coming in, what kind of price range they're in. Are they in a really good price? Are they priced to sell? Do they have anything to give? So I agree, Kaylee, thank you. We're still seeing that.
I think going back to the shut up and listen part is if your clients, if they can't get on the same page, try to flip the tables so they understand from the seller's perspective or vice versa. And then if ultimately your client doesn't want to do what you suggest, make sure that, like, say it was deadlines and the seller's like, yeah, we want a quick closing, but we can't accommodate that. Make sure you communicate that to the agent so that they know that you're not ignoring what they told you. Like, hey, let them know this is what you're looking for, but unfortunately we can't do that right now or whatever, so that we're not just ignoring what that agent told us.
That's a really good point. That makes them feel better and know that you're listening to them, which everybody wants to be heard, no matter what you're negotiating. So great.
Because I've had that before where agents have called and asked specifically, and I've told them exactly what my sellers wanted. And then we get an offer that's not even 50% of what we discussed and nothing else. And I'm like, did you even listen? Which I'm sure they did. And their buyers weren't able to do that. But yeah, just communicate. Communicating
that would have been helpful when you're looking at that offer, because you would know that they listened to you instead of just ignoring what you said. And you would understand a little bit from the buyer side why they couldn't do that. So that would be good. Yeah, great. Okay. Zig Ziglar says, you can get anything you want if you can figure out how to get the other person what they want. Say that again. You can get anything you want if you can figure out how to get the other person what they want. Okay, let's watch another video. Now this one, when you're watching it, a totally different strategy in negotiations. And it has nothing to do with real estate, but I wanted to show it because I think it's interesting to talk about this, his negotiation tactics in this case. So let's see if I can find it. There we go. Right here. So I have to stop share. Just give me just a second. Oh, wait. Stop. Okay, there we go. Let me just share again. If you can't hear it, speak up, because again, I can't see you guys once it starts. Okay.
Come, you're not pregnant yet. Does this thing not work? Does your thing?
Can eating sweet potatoes make us look younger? That's correct. This amazing potato actually can make us look
Thing not work? What is going on?
Yeah.
I bet she's sick. I always knew she
That was supposed to be a little bit past that, but just
had that lisp.
just a
Maybe it's
second.
because of the way he walks. It's the lisp. I knew what was going to happen with his family, and then you're overthinking, right? Shut everybody up right up front. Tell everybody to manage expectation. Anticipation is game. Day before I got married, I sat my parents down. They hadn't been in the same room for 20 years. 20 years they hadn't been in the same room. And if they were in the same room together, a German would have been resurrected to start World War III. I mean, they could not be in the same room together. But I brought them to my house. They said, oh, we're coming to your wedding. I said, no, you're not. Of course we're coming to your wedding. I said, who told you to come to your wedding? Did I send you an invitation? I didn't send you an invite. You are invited to my house, both of you together. We're not coming to your house. Oh, you're not coming to the wedding. So I said, what is wrong with you? We're your parents. So I said, listen, I'm just telling you, it's very simple. You come to my house, that is your ticket to the wedding. Because you are not going to create this escapade at my wedding the first time you see each other after 20 years, Iran, all this other stuff. So they came to my house and they sat down. It was so uncomfortable. It was entertaining. I wish I would have recorded this setting, right? So they're sitting, I'm looking at them. I can't take the smile off my face because I'm having too much fun with this. So I say, hey, mom, dad, I'm going to step out. You guys got to talk. And you guys got to hash it out because you guys can't have any politics at the wedding. So I step out. I am literally out for 20 seconds. They tell me, we're ready, come back. And so I come back and I said, what happened? We're good. I said, no problems. No. I said, okay, you guys are invited. Here's the invitation. Here's the invitation. They came to the wedding. But I told my mom that. They said, Mom, you have to realize in a Middle Eastern culture, a lot of times, moms are put number one before wives. I want you to know the day I get married, the following day you go from number one to number two. And it's very simple. And I don't want to hear about it. She is my number one. You are my number two. I love you, but you're not number one. You're number two. It's very hard for her. But
Okay. Okay, open up your chats. Tell me your takeaway on this. Like how he negotiated, right? Very different type of negotiation. So let's talk about this. You can open up your chat, type stuff in your chat, or you can unmute and talk about it too.
I
would
thought
like to
it
say,
was
whoops.
cool how he anticipated a problem and headed it off before there was.
Okay, anticipated a problem and headed it off before there was one. Okay. Is that Mary?
Yeah, I think he defined, like the other woman just said, he defined the expectations. He controlled the expectations. He knew what was coming, but he let people know that he redefined the expectations. So he took away their ability to negotiate what they wanted. He laid it out up front. This is what will happen. This is how you can participate. So he redefined the expectations. I thought it was brilliant.
Yeah, do you need to do that sometimes? In real estate, do you need to do that sometimes? Do you
Oh,
have
yeah.
people who, do you have people who have, I mean, I can't go any higher than this, right? Or I can't do that. So there's definitely some times when you have to set very clear boundaries. And so this is a very different, for me, if I tell somebody I can have your loan done in 4 weeks, if I have it done in 5 weeks, are they happy with me? Right? Now, if I tell them I'm going to have it done in 3 weeks and I'm done in 4 weeks, they're frustrated. If I tell them I'm going to have it done in 3 weeks and I'm done in, 2.5, they're super happy, right? But if I'm done when I say I'm going to be done, if I set expectations and I don't follow through, then that's a big deal too, right? If I tell somebody I can do your loan, I better be able to do it. I give somebody a pre-approval, I better be able to do that pre-approval, because it doesn't take very long before the people that aren't going to trust you. I don't want to, you know, go with somebody who can't do what they say they're going to do. So having expectations and setting them is going to help in a lot of different scenarios. And in this case, right, he knew that something was going to happen if he didn't take it into his own hands. And so if you can see any problems, foresee any problems and mitigate that up front, that's going to be a lot more smooth for your buyers and for you. And we always try to be done early. Why? Why do you want a lender to be done early? If you're a real estate agent, you give a lender a contract, why is it helpful for them to be done a few minutes early? Or a few days early? So on the chat, it said, Kellen said exceed expectations, which is super awesome. But do you ever have last minute things like, you know, assessment fees or things that come up? Title things sometimes come up at the last minute. Always nice to have a little bit of extra time. If you're just waiting, fine. But if, yeah, it reduces stress big time. So I always like to have a week early, just in case. I hope I've looked at everything and that we're not going to have any problems. But if we do, we're not stressed about trying to get an extension. You can just take care of it in that time. Okay, let's go back to our chats a little bit and just see. Very direct in his reproach. Tannen said ruthless, set expectations and boundaries up front. Tannen, can you tell us why was that so ruthless to you?
Well, I thought about it at first where he's like, Mom and Dad, you're not coming. And that's, I think everybody wants their parents there for the most part, right? But he says, I do want you there, but these are what I want to see.
Yeah.
This is how I expect you guys to behave. And, you know, did it in a tactful manner, but a little bit hard when it's your own parents, you know, your own mother and father.
True. Now, do you have to be like, it's interesting because what changes something from a ruthless negotiation to a boundary? What's the difference? Is there a difference? Because there are situations where, you know, you do have to set boundaries with people, and even your mom and dad sometimes are people that could cause a lot of harm to you. So if that's the situation and the only thing you can do is to set a boundary, is that ruthless? I'm not sure there's a correct answer, you guys. It's just an interesting thing to think about, right?
I think it's more delivery, Eden.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
Whether it comes across as ruthless or it comes across as the boundary, and you can communicate that.
Yeah.
You can say, this is just something I can't negotiate on. And I think he basically did. Like, we're not going to have a scene at my wedding.
Right.
So if you want to come to the wedding, you got to come to my house first.
Right. And I think for me, when I'm looking at that, the reason why it doesn't feel so ruthless is because there's been so many times in my life where I needed to set a boundary and I didn't. And I was always sorry later. So I think just thinking about boundaries that you have and thinking about how your stress levels and thinking about other people's stress levels, boundaries can really help to alleviate a lot of that. And even, you know, in real estate, knowing exactly how much you can afford and sticking to it, knowing what you're comfortable with, knowing what you have to net from a sale. And then, but then there's another thing too, like I have a client who they were negotiating on 2 homes. The first one, the seller's agent was really new, and she came back and was arguing over $600. And they were frustrated about that, and they decided, and then they also made them wait 6 days before they were willing to look at the offers. And so they went and started looking at other things, and they found another house that they liked better. And it ended up being, okay, we like this better. This is good that we looked a little bit more, and they were happy about that. But then they had set their purchase price at $450,000. They were not willing to go more than $450,000. Now they qualified for like $700,000, but they were not willing to go more than $450,000. They felt comfortable with that payment. But this next house that came up was, I think they would have had to pay about $16,000 more to get it, but it had an apartment in it that they could have rented out. But they would not budge. We could not talk to them about, you know, even, you know, we're trying to say, I really think this is a good deal. I think it will be really hard for you to find this nice of a place with an apartment for $475,000, you know. So sometimes our boundaries can hurt us, right? And I feel like in that situation, you know, I really don't think they're going to find another deal like that. But at the end of the day, they get to decide. So it's interesting to think about our boundaries, and when we place them, do we place them so hard and fast that we can't think about something that's outside of our boundary that may be a really good thing for us? So I think that's something good to consider too. He clearly knew what he wanted to have happen before he started the conversation. Setting expectations up front. Let them know who was in control. Okay, Mary, set the expectations. That's more her approach, okay? He knew his parents well enough to dictate the terms. Now that's an interesting thing, right? Do we know who we're working with good enough? Do we spend the time to get to know the people we're working with, to understand where they're coming from so that we can help them? That's great. Okay, let's do this other one, these two real estate agents. Let's see. Yeah, right here. Nope, that's not the right one. So annoying. I had them all up and they all went away. Let's see. There we go. All their ads. Okay, just a minute. Let me share it again.
When buying a house. My name is Andrew Finney, your real estate geek. If you need help finding a top agent where you live, or if you simply want to drop me a line to say hello, my contact buy them, that is a seller's market. In other words, there's fewer homes available than there are buyers willing to buy them. That is a seller's market. If you have more homes that are available than there are buyers to buy them, that is a buyer's market. And when you're pretty balanced, it's pretty stable, homes are taking on average somewhere between 3 and 6 months to sell, then generally you're seeing a more stabilized marketplace where negotiations will.
Are we stabilized? I'm not sure we're quite there.
Bit easier. So as we move forward throughout this video with the next 12 tips I'm going to give you for negotiation tactics when buying a house, keep that in mind by first always identifying what kind of market that you're in and put these tips into place and into practice depending on the market that you're in, okay? So the first one is always going to be the same in any marketplace, and that's actually getting your finances in order before buying a house. Before you even start looking at a house, you want to make sure that you get your finances in order. And with your finances being in order, we want to see that you go ahead and work with a local loan officer to get a loan pre-approval letter. For reference, a loan pre-approval letter is going to be issued whenever you provide your last 2 years tax returns, your last 2 years W-2s, 2 months bank statements, 1 month of pay stubs, any other assets and or savings accounts, investment accounts that you may have. Of course, your credit is going to be checked and your employment is going to be verified. So the 4 main factors that go into a loan pre-approval letter are your income, assets, credit, and employment verifications. If a loan officer hasn't done that, then unfortunately you do not have a loan pre-approval letter. A common question that arises whenever I chat with families here in Las Vegas or some of our community that reaches out to me is, how long does it take to get a loan pre-approval letter? The answer is always the same. It really depends on you and how fast you can furnish those documents. The 2 great local loan officers that I work with here in Las Vegas, being Bill Marin at New American Funding and Josh Coomer over at Man Mortgage, they can actually issue you a pre-approval letter in as little as 30 minutes if they have all of your documentation ready to go. Or if there's some issues, then they can give you an outline of what you need to do going forward to go ahead and get your loan pre-approval. Most agents won't even show a home unless you have a loan pre-approval letter. So it's something to think about and something to consider when you get ready to contact a trusted real estate advisor. If you don't know where to go to get your loan pre-approval letter, I always recommend that you start with a trusted real estate advisor so that they can assist you in meeting a local loan officer. And set up a time to meet with that trusted real estate advisor for a buyer consultation, identify the home buying process, the market trends, and what's going on in your market so that you can come up with a strong game plan and strategy moving forward. That's the first tip. Get your financial house in order. Be prepared for your down payment and also buyer closing costs. Buyer closing costs are generally 2% to 4% of a sales price. So let's use an example of $300,000 of a home that you want to purchase. If you were purchasing a $300,000 home and you were using a 5% conventional loan down payment, right? Then that's going to be $15,000 for the down payment side that you need to be prepared for. In the same case, you're going to have buyer closing costs. 2% to 4% is normal. In this example, let's go ahead and just use a rounded number of 3%. That'd be an additional $9,000. So then you take that $15,000 for your down payment and you add it to that $9,000 you'll have for buyer closing costs, and that's $24,000 you need to be prepared for just to get into your house. Please don't forget about your moving expenses that you may have or anything else that you need to prepare for whenever you move into your new home. So negotiation tactic number 2 is actually doing the math before getting hung up on little trivial matters. When I say doing the math before getting hung up on trivial matters, let's say that a house is listed for like $299,000. You want to feel like you got a really good deal or that you got a great deal, but let's say that house is actually worth $299,000, and so you want to offer $295,000, but there's other buyers in the market as well that are bidding on the house, but you stand firm at the $295,000. Everybody else is offering $299,000 or maybe more. How do you think that's going to work for you in a seller's market? How do you think it's going to work for you if you're hanging on to that $5,000, which is essentially like an additional $19 to $20 a month on your monthly mortgage, and you could be losing the right home for you? So don't get hung up on small price differences. When just do the math, talk to your local loan officer, talk to your trusted real estate advisor so that you know, number 1, whether the house is worth it, which takes us into negotiation tactic number 3, which is basing your offer on the home's value and not the list price. Is extremely, extremely, extremely important for me to stress this to you, especially if you're in a seller's market, because what happens is emotions start taking hold because you're out looking at homes, you're making offers on homes, and you're getting a little bit discouraged if you're getting beat out on some of these bidding wars. It's okay. It's part of the home buying process. Please don't lose your cool. Please keep your wits about you, because what happens sometimes is buyers will just get so enthralled and in the heat of the moment with emotions that they start offering the list price or more than the list price, and the home may not be worth this. So the problem with that is, at the end of the day, there's going to be an appraisal whenever you enter the closing process. The appraiser is going to come in and they're actually the ones that assign the value to the house. That value that the appraiser assigns to a house is actually the amount of loan you're going to be able to get for your new home. So let's go back to our $300,000 home example. Let's say that it was in a really hot bidding war. You have buyers that were offering $305,000, maybe $310,000. You have some that offer $300,000, and let's say that house in reality is worth $280,000. If you're not working with the right trusted real estate advisor that's taking the time to perform what's called a comparative market analysis prior to making an offer on that home, and you bid out at $300,000, you're going to have issues when you go into the closing process with that appraisal. The seller's going to have to come down in the price. You're going to have to come out of pocket the difference, or you and the seller are both going to split hairs. And in splitting hairs, let's just be clear. Let's say that house comes in for $280,000, and that's the fair market for that house. You offer $300,000. That means the seller's agreeing to take $10,000 less, and you're agreeing to come out of pocket another $10,000 above and beyond your down payment and buyer closing costs to buy that house, if that was the agreement that was reached whenever you had that appraiser. Now, ideally, what happens is a seller will do the right thing and reduce their price to the appraised value of the home. In many cases, that's not always the case, unfortunately. It is the right thing to do, but at the end of the day, a lot of people don't do that. You're talking about money, so people are pretty interesting when it comes to money matters. That being said, keep that in mind. Please always offer the market value on the house and not necessarily the list price. And a smart listing agent that is a trusted real estate advisor will normally advise their clients to list at fair market value, sometimes a little bit less if they're trying to drive a multiple bidding war. At the same time, there are still a lot of overpriced homes out there, and generally about a third of all homes will fall out of the closing process, even in a very, very strong seller's market. Something to think about, something to consider, and it's something for you to know as you move forward with making offers. It's not going to do you any good if you offer list price and the home's not worth it just to win the bid, because it's going to come back later and it could cost you money, okay? So then there are, going into our negotiation tactic number 4, we're going to start talking about, if you see a house, be prepared to move and move quickly, especially if it's in a seller's market. When properties go on the market, they go extremely, extremely quickly, especially if they're considered turnkey move-in ready home. In other words, a very clean house that has all of its upgrades done, it's properly staged, the professional photography was on point, and you see a lot of people. If you go into a house and it's like 1 or 2 days on the market and you see like 5 or 10 real estate agents' business cards on the kitchen counters, you already know that house is more than likely already going to have an offer on it right out of the gate just by that sheer observation alone. Be prepared to move extremely rapidly. You see that house that you like, you and your agent going back to your buyer consultation, which is kind of like a prequel of sorts to point number 1 by meeting a trusted real estate advisor first. Ideally, you want to meet that trusted real estate advisor 6 to 12 months in advance of actually buying a home, so that you guys can start forming a relationship, start getting a game plan going on, so that whenever the time comes to get your meet up with the local loan officer, get your loan pre-approval letter, then this negotiation tactic number 4 is going to be right here ready, and you're already going to know when you see a nice house that you really like, you need to go check it out. If you feel good about it whenever you get there, you need to be prepared to write an offer on that house so that you don't get beat out by another offer. But before you do that, always ask your trusted real estate advisor. And in fact, by working with a trusted real estate advisor, more often than not, they're going to go ahead and perform a comparative market analysis on that property if you say that you want to make an offer on that house, just to double check the value. But something for...
Okay, I wanted to stop it there. How many of you do a comparative market analysis? How many of you agree with what he's saying? Anybody agree?
Our agents do.
Okay. What's the difference for those of you who don't know? Mary, can you tell us what's the difference between a comparative market analysis and some other value system? Why do they call it? Why is it different?
Well, the way we do ours, we look at the houses that are in our market, that are in that area, that are comparable homes, just like we would do the same thing if we were going to list a home.
And tell me what the issue was with the MLS recently. Wasn't there an issue with the value system? So is the comparable market analysis different than values you would get from the MLS? Does that make sense? Wasn't there like a problem with the MLS value system? Shannon?
Yeah, so what happened was that when you do your CMA, the bedroom count, the bathroom count, the size of the yard, the age of the home, the car garage, that sort of thing, already had predetermined values in it. And when they got rid of that, it kind of threw a lot of agents that really don't know how to price homes and how to price, certain things. It really kind of threw them for a loop.
Okay. So there is, so then Tannen, what would you recommend for people? Because they've gotten rid of that now, right? They've changed the algorithms. Is that what they did?
They totally erased the algorithms. And the reason why they erased the algorithms altogether, the values, so to speak, is because it's not a generalization for every home in every neighborhood in every city. And so I think that's why they're trying to help us actually become better and become more professional at what we're doing, not just an extra bedroom is going to add you another $5,000 or whatever to your home value. It's what can we do to be more specific?
Okay. Yeah, I heard something about that. So when you go in to make an offer, do you do your own kind of analysis of where you think the appraisal will come in on the property, so that you're kind of counteracting or checking the listing price?
always.
Okay, Alicia, can you expound on that a little bit? Do you do your own CMA?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I'm their real estate expert, and I need to know myself and, you know, reassure them. We need to know where we're at as far as value goes. We don't want to offer too much. We don't want to offer too little. We want to make sure that we're going to be okay when it comes to appraisal time.
Sure.
So yeah, definitely.
Okay, good. Did you guys agree with his 6 to 12 months? You like to have people come talk to you 6 to 12 months before they're ready to buy? So you can kind of get ready. Okay, okay. Now that doesn't always happen, right? Sometimes you have people, I want to offer on this house. Okay, go talk to the loan officer and get pre-approved right now so that we can make an offer on the house. And sometimes that happens that way too. Okay, let's talk about, can you guys see these discussion questions? Let's talk about these. Well, let's give a second word. Is Bethany trying to chat with me here? Let's see. Oh, let's look at our chats. Always do a CMA for sure, every time. Absolutely. Good. Oh, they took away the values part, Ash. Yes, but you can use cloud CMA in the MLS now. Okay. Nathan, did we miss any keywords? Yes, we need to give another keyword. Okay. The second key, we've only given one, Nathan. I'll give the first one again. It's empathy. But you only need 4 out of the 5. The second keyword is CMA. Let's do CMA.
Eden.
Yeah.
Tannen has his hand up, but I don't know if that's on purpose.
I think it was from before. Was it from before, Tannen?
Yeah, sorry. I'll
That's
take
okay.
it down.
I don't know how to take it down. I should learn.
I just did it. There we go.
Yeah, you did. Thank you. Okay, I wanted to have a little bit of a discussion. Why are you worth 6%? Why are you, or 3% on either side? Why are you worth that? Does anybody want to unmute and just give us a short synopsis of how you sell yourself? Because whenever I have somebody ask me, do I need an agent? I always say, yes, you need an agent. And what do you say to people when they say, hey, so-and-so is doing it for 1%. Can you match that?
I'll comment in.
Oh, thanks, Jeff.
I appreciate the information so far. I think you've hit some really great points. And those first 2 points probably are our greatest value. Number one is being able to understand the market well enough to give accurate values of the property. So they're not either leaving money on the table or wasting time by being overpriced. The second one comes down to negotiations. As we look at all the creative ways that a deal can be put together, finding a win-win situation certainly isn't always highest price or fastest close, but a combination of those and also terms like inclusions or different ways that we can put the deal together so everyone feels comfortable moving forward and not risking, lawsuits, problems with contracts, things that our understanding of contracts and these variables can help them get what they want in the best time possible.
Appreciate that. Thanks. What do you think about discount brokerages? Right. So if somebody's saying, okay, I'll only give 1%, will you match that? Do you ever do that?
Give away or
yeah. Right. So I think I just want to put a plug for you as real estate agents. You earn your money. And when you're good at what you do, you deserve to be paid. And it isn't just put up a sign and you get paid. And so people need to realize what value you're adding. Like Abby's put in countless offers for these people and they don't want to listen to her, you know. She keeps helping them and she keeps talking to them professionally. And when she finally gets them under contract, she's definitely earned her money. So don't discount what service you are adding to the market and to people. Let's see, I saw a sign, Nathan Harris, fast, cheap, or good. You can only ever pick 2. Thanks. When I go in to buy something, I never want the very most expensive thing, but I for sure never want the cheapest thing. So, and how do people pick their agents anyway? Mary says, I'd ask if they discount their price, are they discounting their service as well? That's fair, right? Sorry, what did I ask? Forgot what I asked. Who was paying attention? Remembers what I just asked. Janet,
How
what
do
did I
people
ask?
choose agents?
Oh, yes. Aubrey, thank you. Christine. How do people choose their agents?
Word of mouth, or
Word of
you know,
mouth.
referrals, I think, is your biggest asset.
We did a little study. If you, some of you have seen my other classes where we talk about this a little bit, but we did a little study with 1,600 people who we done loans for, and we asked them to tell us how they picked their real estate agent. And almost all of them, I think it was 85%, picked them based on somebody else's reference. And very few of them pick it based on social media. So really it's you working with somebody, them having a good experience, telling somebody else about you, and then continuing that. So we're all interconnected, and that's kind of the idea of talking about negotiations in this way, in that we don't want to hurt the other side to get what we want. We don't want to stomp on them even if we get what we want, because then that will hurt us later. Let's see, number 3, I saw a sign where this other agent was willing to give me part of their commission for closing costs. Are you willing to do that? Jeff, you're shaking her head. No way.
No, I don't buy deals. I don't buy transactions. I don't buy houses for people. If they're going to work with me, I'm going to do what they need me to do to get them what they want. But obviously I've done something wrong if they don't have the confidence that I can do that without me losing on the transaction.
Sure. Thank you. Let's see. Now, so for some of you newer agents, think about, where you stand in these places and these circumstances so that you're prepared. You're the listing agent, the house is not selling. How do you negotiate with the seller to drop their price? Do you negotiate with the seller to drop their price?
No, if they want to be the highest bidder on their property, then they can keep it and I don't need to sell it because they're the highest bidder. They can lower the price and someone else will pay more. Otherwise, they're going to pay the most and keep it.
Oh, okay, interesting. So if you're listing and they want to list for more than you think it's worth, what do you do?
Walk away. I'm not going to waste it on a property that won't sell.
Okay. Yeah, right. I mean, if you're just sitting there as a listing agent and it's not going to sell, that's your time, right? Kaylee says test waters and show why that is high. Okay. How would you do that, Kaylee? And agree to reduce it in X amount of time. Okay. But then you list it at what you want. What's your theory there? Emily, you unmuted. Did you have a comment? Oh, I can't hear you. But it says you're unmuted. Do you want to type it in the chat? Okay, Kaylee, I know you have a baby, so maybe it's not a good time to talk. But we all have different ways that we think of things, and it's not necessarily wrong or right? Jeff says, I'm walking away, I'm not wasting my time. And Kaylee may have a different idea, and that's okay. It doesn't necessarily mean that one way is the right way, but you just want to decide what your way is and what you're willing to do and what you're not willing to do. That's another boundary point. You represent the buyer and the seller has countered for $2,000 higher than your buyer is willing to go. What do you do here? Have you ever had to walk away from a deal over, don't lose a deal over $2,000, right? I mean, that's hard. There was another video, I couldn't find that one, but he talked about don't lose a deal over a couple $1,000s. Don't lose a great deal. But what do? Your buyer, it's like that buyer that we couldn't talk into the fact that this was a great deal, right? They're just like, no, I can't go over $450. And that's their prerogative. So do you guys have any ideas? Have you had that happen, and what do you do? Do you try to negotiate with them, or do you just say, okay, you're right, whatever you say, we're gonna do? Jeff?
I always have, oh,
No, go ahead, Kaylee.
I always have the lender run payments so they can actually see what the difference is.
Oh,
Because
that's a good
$2,000 is
idea.
nothing in the grand scheme of things. And then you also bring them back to their why they're buying a house, and then also why that house, like what triggered them to go after that one in the beginning. Because $2,000 is nothing. We should be able to help them with that.
Right. What about the market right now with interest rates? How do you compete? Like, how do you tell people or have people understand that it's still a good time to buy? Do you believe it's a good time to buy still?
Yes. You just educate them on equity and that there's a potential to refinance too. But I'm also huge on making sure they're comfortable. So if we're looking at the wrong price point because of interest rates, we need to be looking lower so that we can get them comfortable.
And right now, I would recommend being careful with your pre-approvals that you have. And before you make an offer with them, to check on rates again and just see some. I try to put a little bit of cushion in my pre-approvals, but then, you know, that's a give and take too, right? But right now I'm telling people, okay, here's your pre-approval, here's your max. Check with me right before you make an offer. Let's see where rates are. Because
I think it's good. There's a lot of lenders out there that are doing a range too. Like, hey, this is the range of what your price point would be if this is where interest rates are hovering.
Oh, that's a good idea too. Yeah, that's a great idea.
I really liked that.
Yeah, that's really cool. And that helps your buyers too, to be able to see where their payment's going to be at the different interest rates too.
And it's good for the lender too, because then it's not like I need to know right now. Like, okay, we kind of have an idea of where that would fall and make sure they're comfortable.
Right. Let's see. Let's go back here to our chats. That's where being the local expert economist comes in, know what the market's doing and also know their motivation. Mary says, depends on your buyer and the relationship you have with them. Okay. So Mary, if you know and you have a good relationship with them, then you're more likely to push them a little bit. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, I think you can talk with them a little bit differently. But like with Kaylee, you're always gonna go back to the lender, because the lender is the one who knows, who's intimately aware of their financial situation. The agents don't always know the full story, right? We don't necessarily know what assets they have or things like that, but the lender does. And the lender can then go back and look at that situation and say, look, you've got this money sitting in this savings account that's making you nothing. You can take $2,000 out of that savings account towards the price of this house, and the homes are going to appreciate over time. We know that. Yeah, the prices are coming down now, but that doesn't mean the value isn't appreciating. So I think it just depends on that relationship. I mean, sometimes some of our buyers agents, their people are absolutely strapped. They can't afford another $19 or $20 a month on their payment. And depending on that relationship, sometimes our buyers agents, will take it out of their commission and talk with the lender and figure out how can I help them out with this amount on my commission. So just depends on your relationship with your buyer. And the philosophy on our team is a good deal is better than no deal. And by a good deal, if the buyer gets the home they want and the agent gets paid, we're good.
Right. Appreciate that. Okay, so knowing your buyer is important. Okay. I have another video that I want to show. This one is actually Chris Voss that and he has let's see if I can go back here. 3 negotiation mistakes that are hurting your deals. So let's watch that one. Okay, let me share. Oh, wait. If I don't click these two buttons, it doesn't share it right. Okay. Okay, you should be able to see Chris Voss. Now, one thing I've noticed about Chris Voss, he talks a little slow, but this is a short video, so.
Voss here, CEO of the Black Swan Group. I'm here to talk to you today about the 3 negotiation mistakes that are hurting your deals. This is part of the Black Swan method, and this is from a great article by Brandon Voss. The 3 negotiation mistakes that are hurting your deals are: number 1, listening to respond versus listening to understand. Number 2, using I understand. And number 3, asking yes-oriented questions. Now let's dive in. Number 1, listening to respond versus listening to understand. This is the big problem, and where really all of your problems stem from. Most people don't listen at all, and if they do listen, they listen to just go, aha, or to contradict, or to jump back in, or to tell somebody why they're wrong. I'm sorry, this is self-centered stuff. To quote Gerard Nuremberg, a negotiation guy that I studied way back when I first started this journey, he said, listening is as much about sensing emotions as it is about hearing words. If you're listening to understand, you're sensing emotions. You're trying to figure out where they're coming from. You're taking the focus off you, and you're really putting your focus on them and their perspective and their facts and how they feel about their facts. What has affected them and what kind of reactions has that perception of those effects had on them? That's listening to understand. Now, number 2, using I understand. Now, you might say this being very well-intentioned. You might say this because you're trying to express to the other person that you do understand. And this is a misinterpretation of the Covey advice from way back when: seek first to understand, then be understood. And a lot of people, in a very well-intentioned way, will say, I understand, as if it's going to make the other side feel better. Now, your intention is good, but your application is going to fall short. Never in the history of mankind has somebody said to another person, I understand, and stop there, and had the other person say, oh, thank God, and instantly feel better. Your goal of trying to make them feel understood is the goal. Not that you understand, but that you make them feel understood. And unfortunately, saying, I understand, doesn't make anybody feel understood. As Brandon Voss has always said, if we could reach in your brain and take out the phrase, I understand, entirely, you'd probably be better off. The other problem with the application of this is that most of the time that people have heard this, somebody has said, I understand, but, and then told them why they were wrong. Well, this doesn't make anybody feel good. But is an erasing word. But erases the intention and the words of everything that came before it. So even if you meant to make them feel good, as soon as you said but, you wiped it out. Now, the second problem with I understand is a lot of people think, okay, so if I do understand, that means that I can tailor my message and it'll really hit home. So in a very well-intentioned fashion, you take as much time as you can beforehand to try to understand. You research them, you research their situation. You research everything you can about them. And then you think you do understand, and therefore you can talk and they can listen, and your talk is going to be that much more effective because you understood. No, the goal is to make them feel understood. And the only way you can make them feel understood is to articulate, to express their perspective back to them and look for the words, that's right. That's right is what people say when they feel understood. And that's what you're going for. You're not going for you're right, which is when you're pitching and they're just asking you to stop talking. You're going for that's right. Finally, number 3, asking yes-oriented questions. No, no, no. Now, I know you're probably doing this, and I know you're achieving some success with it. That's the problem. People achieve some success with this. We live in a Las Vegas world. The Black Swan Group and the Black Swan method is to get you off of the gambling table where you win 10% of the time, which is probably what you do with yes-oriented questions, and move you onto the gambling table where you win 80% of the time. It's about increasing your percentages. There are those of you that are out there that say, I make deals or I come to agreement with yes-oriented questions. That's my data. Yes, you do. And you are not making as many deals as you could make. You could be asking yes-oriented questions of very respectful intention. You're just trying to respectfully confirm that something is true. And from a very early age, you were taught that when you heard the word no, there were problems, because it's usually the first word that every kid learns. No. Why? Because every adult is pointing at them when they do something that they didn't mean to do but was wrong, and the adult points at them and says no. I mean, everybody's got stories about that was the first word their child heard. I don't understand why my kid says no all the time. Well, because you were pointing at him and saying no. So the experience of hearing no has been drilled into our head since we were toddlers, that no meant bad. Well, if no is bad, yes must be good. Actually, that's the problem, because empathy is about the other side, how the other side feels. So while we were horrified when that adult pointed at us and said no, actually the adult felt good. The adult felt like they were giving direction, and it made them feel safe and protected. And this is one of the critical issues of why no is a great response, but also simultaneously, while we're horrified by it, we think yes is success, therefore no must be failure. Well, who says yes is success? As a matter of fact, there's three kinds of yeses: confirmation, commitment, and counterfeit. And so many people use yes confirmations to try to get people into yes commitment that they get really good at yes counterfeit. And also, everybody's been bashed by this. The entire world is yes battered. Everybody's been walked into a deal or some agreement somewhere at the early stage of their life by a series of yes-oriented questions, and suddenly they found themselves in the middle of something they didn't want to do. And they were scarred by it. They were battered by it. So what happens if you ask a respectful yes question to someone who's already yes battered? Well, what happens to an abused child when another adult, being very well-meaning and knowing that hugs are physically good for people, walks up to this abused child and raises their arms? Doesn't matter where your attention is, the child is still going to duck. They're still going to recoil. They're still going to pull back. And this is one of the insidious habits that a lot of people get into in a very well-intentioned fashion, that are a slow erosion and toxin on all their relationships. So to recap, number one, instead of listening to respond, listen to understand, and work on sensing the emotions when you're understanding so that you do understand. Number two, instead of saying, I understand, demonstrate what you understand. Articulate it. Make them feel understood, especially with the emotions about their feelings that you sensed when you were listening. And number three, get out of yes-oriented questions entirely. Just stop doing it. Drive for that's right versus yes. Or even switch your yes-oriented questions around to no-oriented questions. Great example is, instead of saying, have you got a few minutes to talk? Ask, is now a bad time? Just to experiment with the conversation.
Okay. Anybody have some comments? You can open your chats, put your comments in, you can unmute. Curious what you think. Let's do the third word though, real quick, because we have about 20 minutes left and I still have 3 words to give. So let's do our third word, boss, B-O-S-S. Now, anybody else who feels like he talks slow, try to find a short video of his, because I want him to spit it out. But he's supposed to be the top negotiator, right? He's the top negotiating guy. So I laughed when I was like, okay, I got to find a short video of his, because I'm sitting there going, please just tell us. Okay, let's open our chat. Oh, Kaylee, I always listen to videos sped up. Good point. Oh yeah, the third word is Voss, V-O-S-S, Chris Voss. He has tons of videos if you guys want to go and look at other videos or listen to them while you're in the car, just to remember some of the things. Mary said, I especially like point 1. It applies in all areas of our lives. Mary, can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Well, most people listen to respond. If in all of our relationships, you're talking to a spouse, you're talking to a child, you're talking to a parent, you're talking to a coworker, you're listening to what they're saying so that you know how to respond to what it is they said.
Sometimes, do you ever catch yourself in a conversation where you're so focused on what you're going to say next that you're not listening to what they're saying?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I catch myself sometimes.
So that's what I said. It applies in literally every conversation we have.
Yeah. And I was thinking maybe he's so relaxed because he's just listening and he's paying attention and he's not so worried about what's going to be said next. I'm not sure. Okay. Listen to understand. Rebecca liked that one too. What about Alicia? Go ahead.
Yeah, I have an experience. I think sometimes we get all wrapped up in the fact that we're the quote unquote real estate expert and we want to educate them. We want to tell them what we know. And I remember one time, I used to be a nurse and I had a patient who, sorry, had me do a listing presentation for him. And he was sick and wanted to just sell his house. And I wanted to get him top dollar. And I just wasn't listening. I wasn't listening when he kept telling me that he just wanted to sell the house and get out of it and didn't want top dollar, didn't want to even move junk out of it. You know, I just realized when I didn't get that listing and he sold it to an investor for almost nothing, that I wasn't listening. I wasn't listening to what he wanted. And it didn't matter what I knew if I wasn't willing to listen to what he wanted.
And what somebody wants isn't necessarily what you might think is the best thing for them. Is that
Right.
fair?
Fair, very fair.
When I just built a house and I tore my current house down in Lehigh, downtown Lehigh, I totally tore it down. There was nothing, and built a new house in the same spot. I can't even count how many people told me I was crazy. You're crazy. This is a terrible time to build. It's too expensive. You're going to pay off your old loan and have a higher interest rate. Why would you do this? Why wouldn't you sell your house and get your equity out of it? But it's what I wanted to do. So yeah, listening to sometimes what you want to do isn't necessarily the best. Financially, it's not best. Best time to build. When is a good time, right? Like when is there ever going to be another good time to build, right? So I can wait my whole life trying to do what I want to do. But I appreciate that we're sometimes what is best for you isn't necessarily what's best for somebody else. So listening is a really good point. Thank you for sharing. Okay, what about the no thing? He gave us one. Oh, Lily says, I thought it was a good idea. Thanks, Lily. She said it just to me, but I think it's a good idea that you're going to do that too. Okay, what about the no thing? The whole yes world, we're battered by yeses. Anybody have any comments about that? How do you start? I was actually trying to think, okay, how do you start? Do I ever go up to somebody and say, is now a bad time to talk? I don't think I've ever done that, right? So what will happen if I start doing that? Is now a bad time to talk? And then they're going to say no instead of, is now a good time to talk, which is what I always ask, right? Why does that make a difference? Why would that be better? Is it better? Did you guys immediately think, okay, I'm going to try that?
You know, I always, when I talk to people, because they know when I call them that I want to talk to them, I say to them, I'd really like to talk to you when is good for you.
Oh, that's a good idea. Okay.
They know that I want to talk to them, and then I get.
Otherwise, you wouldn't have called.
Right.
Okay.
And that really works for me.
And sometimes do they say, now's a good time? And sometimes they say, oh, can I call you back later?
No, sometimes they say right now, and then I go for it. If not, they say, you know, give me another time. And then I'll say that works. So they know I'll be calling them.
Good.
Anyway.
Let's see if I can find our talking points again. Okay, let's talk about our last little point here. Let's give another word because we only have about 10 minutes. Fourth word, how about listen? I think if you take nothing from this negotiations like a pro, listening is a really good thing for all of us to do. It's probably one of the harder things for people to do just naturally with human nature is to listen instead of just jumping in. So listen. Okay, that's our fourth word. Let's talk a little bit about the appraisal of you guys. I don't know if we're having appraisals come in low right now. I don't know if that'll start to come back a little bit with the way that the prices are going and people discounting their properties. But let's say your appraisal comes in a few $1,000s low and you think then what you think the true value is. How do you negotiate with the appraiser? Do you guys know what the rules are with appraisals when they come in low? Jeff's laughing at me because I can't talk.
No, negotiating with appraisers is really difficult because for the most part, appraisers have to stay completely third party and are not supposed to be influenced by anybody.
Which is where I'm saying there's rules, right? So I can't talk to the appraiser at all as a lender.
And they're not supposed to talk to us, they say, but there are ways to have influence there, and it really comes down to cold hard facts. And the way that you frame the house when it comes to them looking at it, are they being 100% objective, and are there better comps that you can bring to help them get the values where you want it? There's not a lot in there.
And I can't decide if it's some like ego, that there's an ego that plays into that a little bit, because you know, you can think you have a better comp and they'll just, I mean, they have the power to say, nope, I'm not going to use that comp, right? And so it's kind of an interesting dance. I've only had an appraiser change their appraisal one time, and they just raised it $10,000. But $10,000 is $10,000, right? So I typically will tell my agents, if you think it's going to come in low, or you think there's going to be a problem, get prepared. And especially with VA, when they declare Tidewater, then you only have 48 hours to send the new comps to the appraiser. So anyway, kind of an interesting to think about, but yeah, the only time we can actually order a new appraisal is if there's a mistake. So just because we think the value is low, we're not going to be able to just go in and order a new appraisal. We'd have to have a mistake on there, like they missed a bathroom, or they missed a room downstairs or something like that, before we could actually order another appraisal. So I have had sometimes where they just had to leave because they got a better appraisal somewhere else. It was just a one-off weird appraisal. I don't know, but that still does happen every once in a while. Can you repeat the fourth word? Listen. Aubrey says, provide comps before. If you have any concerns, upgrade list, etc., all before, so it doesn't feel like you think they're wrong. Aubrey, tell me, providing comps before they even go out and do the appraisal?
Yeah, so we've had that before, especially when the market was a little different than it is right now, where we know, okay, they have offered quite a bit more. We want to try to get as close to that sales price as possible. We will definitely provide them as much information as we can to help bring that value up. I have only been successful in doing that approach versus trying to fix it after. It just kind of helps. Hey, here's some comps that we use to price the house. Here's our upgrade list. Here's the cost that those upgrades were. Anything that we can provide that maybe is not going to be as visible to the appraiser. We've had way more success with that, and it doesn't come off as anything other than helpful. Typically, I've never had an appraiser be annoyed or act annoyed, at least that we provided that beforehand.
Nice. That's great. Alicia said, great point, Aubrey, in the chat. So yeah, that's a good point. Jeff, did you want to say something?
I've had some additional luck with appraisers. One of them is to show off market sales. I've gone to FSBOs in the area that I knew had sold for more, but weren't reported on the MLS. And they required that I get a settlement statement from them to show what that final price was. Another one is that making sure you know all the features of the property. So things that aren't easily visible, like radiant barrier, thermal heating, saying, oh, there's some features about the house. And you kind of went over that a second ago. And the third one is if you can show duress on a previous sell. So they said, oh, well, this home sold for this price. That's a good comp. And you can say, I went and I talked to them. And of course you have to tell the truth. Absolutely. But if you have good information, you do your research, you can find information that helps discredit that number from the comp and will give you at least some angle to be able to say, hey, you know what, when it comes to what market value is, it's worth taking a second look at.
That's great. Thanks, Jeff. How do you get the settlement statement on a deal like that? Do you just call the buyer or the seller?
You smile the whole time you're talking.
You do smile a lot, Jeff. Is that what helps? That's awesome. But you just find them and call them and ask them if you can use it for an appraisal?
The time that it worked for me, it was in the neighborhood. I knew the people. I was able to go talk to them in person because we'd already had a relationship, but I knew that they were a FSBO. I knew what they sold for, and I knew that their comp would help my listing.
Okay, I haven't heard of that before, so that's cool. Okay. Well, we only have 7 minutes, so I'm just going to kind of open it up to any other questions. I'm going to give the last word. So if you're ready to jump off, you can. But if you have any other questions, let me know. And then we'll remember that you need to send the 5 words to my email address, ejohnson@securityhomemortgageallspelledout.com. Send me your 5 words, and then we'll get your credits banked so you get that information. And then typically what I do, if you're not already on my Tuesday morning rate email list and my Friday updates, I'll put you on my list, and then it always says if you don't want to be on here, you can respond and be taken off. But I do have lots of CE classes that I teach. Every couple weeks I teach one. I even teach the 3-hour mandatory and the ethics class. And then I also have some women's self-defense classes coming up. So next Tuesday is our first one. So if that sounds interesting to you, please let me know. I have a couple of spots left for the Tuesday class next week. It's during the day. And I'm excited about it. It's the first time we've done it, and I think it could be a really cool thing. And then I have some movies coming up that I have for Avatar in December, and in November, Black Panther. And if you're on my Tuesday morning rate email list, you know about these. If I haven't given it, Nathan, haven't given the last word. But if you're not on my Tuesday morning rate email list, I've just told agents, use this to reach out to people in your SOI. Just decide, okay, I'm going to ask Eden for 5 tickets or 6 tickets, and I'm going to try to get, 5 people there plus me. So go ahead, Aubrey. Aubrey, were you going to say something?
Oh, sorry. I must have accidentally hit it.
Oh, that's okay. Anyway, use those and negotiate. And this is still a really good time to buy. Spread the positivity. Spread it on Facebook. Spread it on social media. Know why it's a good time to buy. Know the actual facts. So when you tell somebody, you can back it up. But I think, you know, if people wait until interest rates go down, some people have to. But if they can buy right now and they want to, they'll be able to refinance later and they'll get their house that they want without so much competition. So I really feel like it's always a good time to buy. Today's the only day better than today was yesterday or 20 years ago, right? So, okay, thank you for coming to the class. My last word is going to be Eden, my name, E-D-Y-N, spelled with a Y. Okay, thank you for coming. Thank you for spending 2 hours of your day with me. I'll stay on for a minute if people have any questions, but have a great day and I'll see you next time.
Thank you. It was an excellent presentation. I really enjoyed it.
Thanks, Mary. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Eden.
Oh, the final word was Eden. You're welcome.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Yep. Have a good day. Go get some deals. Send me some buyers. Tell me how I can help.
Do you spell Eden a certain way?
E-D-Y-N with a Y. It's weird.
E-Y-D-N.
E-D-Y-N.
Got it. Thank you.
Yep.
Hey, Eden.
Yeah.
I am just kind of getting back into the market again after being away for a little bit. And it is a weird market. It's kind of so let's have if you don't mind, just you were saying, just I guess a brief conversation about why now is a good time to buy. You were saying,
yeah. Go ahead. Sorry, I keep cutting you off.
No, go ahead.
Well, it's interesting because I have a number of people who come to me and they're like, well, I'm going to wait till the market crashes. Or I'm going to wait until the interest rates go down, right? So you have a lot of negativity in the market right now. You have the news is all about negative, right? Our 401ks are crashing, the bond market's crashing, there's so much inflation, all these things, right? And so people are scared to buy. Now, mover uppers, that's hard, right? Because like, for example, if you try to move up right now, your payment might be $1,000, $1,500 more just because of the interest rate. If you have a 2.5 interest and you're at 7.25. So yeah, how do you combat all that negativity? And there's a lady that I have shopping right now who is looking for $1 million house-ish. And her current house is paid off, right? So she's moving up and she can't stomach that payment and she's having a really hard time. Plus she's trying to figure out what she likes because she hasn't been able to look for a long time. But I told her the other day, I said, you marry the house, you date the rate. If you can find the house you want right now, a lot of these builders are discounting, paying seller concessions, a lot of things like that. If you can find the house you want right now, you pay that extra fee for a little while, then you refinance and you're in a better position than if you would have waited. The house is a little bit more expensive, interest rates are lower, and you have a really hard time getting under contract. Now, if we look at the bubble and we say, okay, is this market just going to totally crash? Because some people think it is, right? They're waiting for prices to just go down like they did in 2008, 2009. But there was a lot of different factors back then. And some of the, like if you look at a bar graph, I had a bar graph that was from 1972 to today, the prices of homes, steadily went like this in 2008 or 9, it dipped like this, and then it went up pretty drastically the last few years, right? But some of the experts are saying we are where we are had we not had that, we are where we should be with house prices had we not had that dip in 2008 or 2009. And so there just is so much demand right now that I don't think we're going to have a crash. Now, things are stabilizing. You can find some good deals. People who have to sell in 2 weeks because they built a new house are discounting their houses. People who are moving and have to sell right now are discounting their houses. But I think just we're not paying over appraisal now. We have a little bit of seller concessions. Does that make sense, Alicia?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And do you feel like Utah is a different market than the national market?
I do feel like that, especially Utah County around Lehigh, Point of the Mountain. I do. I feel like maybe it's partly because of the dynamics here, big families, people want to stay here. Maybe it's partly because we have had a lot of people from California move in. I'm not sure exactly why, but they said that Salt Lake was one of the fastest growing markets in the United States. specifically Lehigh. So I think the reason why I feel like it's always a good time to buy, and maybe this isn't scientific, I would never want to pay somebody else's payment when I could have a house of my own.
Yeah, I heard somebody say it's a lot better to pay 7% interest than 100% interest.
Right, which is what you're doing when you're renting.
Yeah.
Yep. And you can refinance. I really think, in the next few years, we're going to refinance again. I don't know that we'll get down in the 2s anymore. We probably should have never been in the 2s. But yeah, I just keep telling people, do what you want to do, live your life. The interest rate's just a blip on the mark, Now that's easy to say for those people who can still afford a 7% interest rate. For those who can't, that's harder, right?
Mm-hmm.
And some people do have to wait.
Can I add a thought?
Yes, please, Joe.
If you were to buy a home in 2008, early 2008, and you had that property still today, would you be happy or sad? Now, if I would have asked that question in 2012, you'd be like, oh no. But the market always keeps going up, and there's no asset on earth like earth. Own land, own property. There's nowhere better to put money. When your client is capable of buying, tell them to buy. It's not a bad investment. Yeah, you're dealing with high interest rates for a period of time. Maybe they'll come down. You'll be able to get a better rate in the future. But look at 401ks. Look at retirement accounts. There is nothing like real estate when it comes to a good place to put your money. Buy every second. If you have an opportunity to buy.
I agree.
Yeah, I do too. I agree. Yeah, I bought at the peak of the market in 2007. We were upside down for several years, but man, sitting pretty now.
Right. And people are scared of being upside down. And I don't know that they would be, but let's say you were for a couple of years, if you can still make your payments, right, it'll rebound.
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree. Thanks, Alicia. I appreciate that.
Thank you all for the discussion.
Yeah, having something to say to people is good. Go ahead.
So Eden, I was just going to say, I have a client of mine who, a small business owner. He started off where he was starting up his business, and his wife was a teacher for a small charter school, and he ended up within a matter of a few years started doing really well, like bought him a condo, and then within a year, 13, 14 months, bought him a house in Eagle Mountain, and within another year after that, bought him $1 million home in Vineyard. And what's interesting is that he's like 10 times his business in the last couple years, and he has since told me the last couple of weeks ago, he says, my tangible assets have gone up in value the last year. My intangibles, my Bitcoin, his stocks, all of that has gone down 30%, over 30% in 1 year, while his real estate, he's got in a couple other things, watches and exotic car hacking, but I guess that's what problems you have when you make good money. But he says those are the only things that have made him money over the last year. And I asked him, I said, well, let me ask you this: if the market does tank or slow down significantly, whatever it might be, do you, of your three options, if you had to choose one that is the most sustainable, what would you say? And he says real estate, absolutely. And that's the hard thing, is I feel like because the market's been doing so well, a lot of people have just started getting creative with how to spend money, and we kind of got to do what we can to get people back to the basics of real estate, and how real estate really is a long-term investment. And we've just kind of gotten spoiled rotten the last 2 years with the amount of appreciation, and real estate, we've got to kind of remind people, is a long-term game, but it always, like one of the gentlemen was just saying, it always comes back.
Yeah, I agree. Thanks, Kenny.
Oh, sorry. I thought I was muted.
Eden, I always tell people I would much rather have sticks and bricks than money in the market where it's numbers on paper and it can disappear tomorrow. But as long as you have sticks and bricks, You can live in it, you can rent it, your kids can live in it. And like somebody said, they're not making any more dirt. So the more you can control, the better off you are. And it's more for the long term. I think people who think they may have to sell in 2 years have maybe a good reason not to buy right now, but rents are so high that even if you end up a little bit upside down, at least, I don't know, at least you've got something of value for a while. So
Right. Yeah, you do have to be a little careful. Like Tam said, it is a long-term thing, and people have gotten spoiled the last year where they've made a lot of money in 1 year. But I talked to somebody the other day who sold right before COVID, like right as COVID started.
Oh, that
they
would
were
be me.
scared. Yeah, see, they were scared the market was going to tank, so they sold right before, and then now they're trying to buy again, right? So I've never talked to anybody who wasn't happy that they bought if they kept their home for 10 years or more, ever, right?
Yeah.
So
And I think your point of people nowadays, young people think that 3% is the norm. I'm old enough to remember 15 and 16% mortgages, and people were still buying houses. People still wanted to own their homes. So I think you're right that we should never have gotten used to 2 and 3%.
right, it's hard to come back from that. But just remember, I'll leave you with this thought. Remember that there still are houses selling. And I think it's fairly close to what the number of houses that were selling last year even. So if I'm right. So we need a little piece of that market, right? We don't need the whole market. We need a little piece of it. So Jeff just said real estate is the most consistent plan to get rich slow. Love it. Okay, you guys have been awesome. Thank you for your discussion. I really appreciate it. Let's all go and be successful, make this the best year so far. And, I've got a lot of people leaving real estate, got a lot of people leaving lending. So stick with it. And there's still lots of business out there. We just need to be a little more creative. So have a great day.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Eden.
Welcome. Bye.